I was reading this morning about what was I reading about? I was reading about farming insects actually. It was about this proposal that, with the increasing, well, with a large human population, an increasingly large human population, increasing difficulties in farming and producing food for those people, that we'll have to switch from costly animal production to other sources of protein, not necessarily just beans and legumes, but insects and things like worms. It's really interesting actually. I'll post a link to it. I can't remember where I saw it now, but it was good. And as soon as I read it, I thought, oh yeah, that's quite interesting. I wouldn't mind getting into that myself actually. Again, based on this show I saw about swarms I've mentioned before, where these people make burgers out of insects, and for some reason I just find that quite interesting. I'd like to know what that tastes like. But obviously I'm a vegetarian, so I don't know. I mean, it's one of those grey areas, isn't it, really? And it's where I, for me at least, I kind of discover the superstitions that's built into my own vegetarianism. Because I won't bore you with the details about how I became a vegetarian, but it wasn't for particularly ethical reasons in the first place, or health reasons. But that's why I stay vegetarian, apart from just habit. And but I know it's completely saturated with illogical, irrational, superstitious ideas, or ideas which aren't, if not superstitious, then are couched in a kind of sentimental humanism and a sentimental anthropomorphism, which is counter to the kind of ideals I try to hold myself to, to do with rationality and those kind of things. So a lot of the reasons why I don't eat animals isn't because of reducing suffering in the world, although that's certainly part of it, and it isn't to do with animal cruelty, although again that's part of it. It's to do with my empathising with this creature, imagining what it would be like. And I think that's fair dues. Obviously a creature's got a central nervous system. We do know what it feels like to have pain, and to have electric shocks run through us, or to be dipped into boiling water, or whatever it is that animals go through. We know that. So there's a place for that. But I can feel my empathy extending down to animals that don't have central nervous systems, like the insects I was talking about before. Insects are very simple creatures. And aquatic insects like prawns and shrimp. These are really simple creatures. And I know they're not real aquatic insects, but they're kind of like that, aren't they? These are really simple. They don't have pain receptors as such. They don't have the same kinds of processing power. But I can feel my empathy extending down there, and that's and I don't eat prawns, and I don't eat any kind of seafood, even the simplest ones like scallops, which are really simple. I was just wondering what that's about, really. I mean, yeah. As I say, I think it's to do with empathy, and partly it's to do with what these things look like, or what they behave like. When I was really little, I used to go fishing with my brother, and obviously we used to use worms or maggots as bait. And when you put a worm or a maggot on a hook, it does this contorting thing. They do this. They contort. They do that. And I know intellectually that a worm or a maggot is not feeling pain. The maggots don't have central nervous systems. There's nothing there that can feel pain. Nothing. And even the insect that a maggot turns into doesn't feel it in that sense. I read somewhere that there's more neurons in a human eyeball than there are in a fly's brain. So it's like expecting your eyeball to be intelligent and to have feelings. It's just daft. But at the same time, watching this maggot squirm on a hook, or the worm squirming on a hook, like in the Leonard Cohen song, it's impossible not to think about what's happening there and to attribute feelings and emotions and thoughts to this creature. Because the movement it makes are very similar, to the movement that a kitten would make if you impaled it on a hook. It's the same kind of contortions, the same kind of rhythm of cruelty that's going on there, and all the signifiers of pain and suffering are being enacted out. And I can kind of feel it in my own body a little bit, the echo of it, or the shadow of it, or neuronal mirroring of it of some kind, you know what I mean? You see this contorting, and you can almost feel your own body going into those spasms and feel what it must be like, and you can imagine the kind of rictus in your throat and your mouth, and what kind of a scream you'd make, you know. And but it's all fake. It's all fake, because as I say, these creatures don't feel those pains. So if I was absolutely rigorously honest to my to what I say my vegetarianism is about, which is about reduction of suffering and animal cruelty, I wouldn't give a shit about worms and maggots and insects. But weirdly enough, I do. Weirdly enough, I do. I know it's funny all that. I mean, part of me is also, just to cover my arse here a little bit really, part of me is also about erring on the side of caution, just in case I'm wrong about this. Just in case I'm wrong and these creatures can feel pain and suffering. I think it's better to err on the side of caution, as I say. But yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, and kind of related to that is this, and I do think I'm able to get past this, but not all the time. Is a kind of tendency to generalise out and almost make a metaphysical claim for this, what's going on there. You know what I mean? Like these creatures, which are capable of contorting when you stick a hook through them, they have something in common, and that something in common is this weird thing called life, you know. And I often hear that, respect for life, as if a respect for life made any sense. As if that phrase made any sense, really. It's a theological claim, I think, ultimately. And, you know, because it attributes life, it says that this thing called life has an existence beyond a series of metabolic and biochemical and electrochemical processes that constitute living organisms. And there isn't something else called life beyond the processes that constitute living organisms. But a respect for life claims there is. I made a video a while, and it's where that shows up actually. I made a video ages ago called Bunny Says Hi. It was one of the first rabbit videos I made. And I just found a dead rabbit in the field, so I kind of picked it up and animated it, you know, and made it like a little puppet show. And I can kind of sense it's in bad taste. And some of the comments that I made, I think Gary, you made a reference to it. I mean, we were having a bit of a spat, you and I, at that point, so I think it was partly coloured by that. But you made some comment about that. It was kind of, I don't think you used the word sick, but that seemed to be the inference. And one or two other people in the comments said something similar. Eden's Cancer said something similar. Eden's Cancer said something similar. But what's being pulled out there, you know, what is this respect for life thing? What is that about? It can only be theological. Eden's Cancer, you Eden, even made this, what I have to say, really spurious kind of reference to North American Indian, Native Americans. What do you call these people now? Anyway, to some fondness you had for their mythology and the respect for life that these people apparently have or had, as a colouring for that experience. But it's theological, isn't it? That's a theological reason for not using a bunny as a puppet. I mean, there might be other good reasons. I'm not saying there aren't good reasons, but it seems to me they're either emotional, based on a weird anthropomorphism related to the one I just talked about in relation to being upset when worms squirm about. So it's partly that, but as I say, partly this quasi-theological deification of the life concept, so it becomes respectful. You know, we become terribly respectful about what life is. Hey big guy, let's go back this way. Alsatian at the other side of the field, I don't want to meet. Come on, mate. So yeah, there's that. I mean, the other thing about insects, just to return to insects, is there's another kind of feeling there, isn't there, which is to do with disgust. You know, we have there's the ooh factor, I think it's called sometimes, technically, the ooh factor, which prevents us eating locusts and worms and so on. No, I did eat a frog once, but it was years ago. It was only a small frog, for a bet. So yeah, but this ooh factor, but I think we can get past that. Oh, the other thing I think, there's a great video on YouTube, I'm sure people may have seen. It's not a funny video. It's this ambulatory robot. It's a robot that walks on legs, and it's really sturdy. You know, it's got fantastic, I don't know how they work, fantastic software running it, I guess. You know, this guy kicks it, and it kind of stumbles to the side and then rights itself. And it's impossible, for me at least, to see that without interpreting it as sentience. Because it's so responsive to the environment, and so responsive to human engagement and being kicked, and so in tune with the world that you think, oh, it must be a living creature. You immediately catch yourself and think, oh, it isn't. But it evokes those anthropomorphic sentiments immediately. It's fantastic. So weird. Anyway, I don't think there's any market in robot farming. No one's going to eat a robot. But I think insect farming or worm farming would be good. And I might be persuaded, if I continue geeing myself up in the way I'm doing right now, I might be persuaded to eat a worm burger or a locust burger or a maggot burger of some kind.